Begin with you. We discussed this on Friday, but of course it's a gift that keeps on giving, the Tamil refugees, and we've suddenly lost the ability to have a moderate analysis of this situation, it seems. Either they must all go back, or they must all stay, and if you don't agree with that person's opinion, you're either a lunatic or a fascist. Surely we can be kind to people without being fools?
Of course we can. I think part of the problem right now is we're in a slow news cycle. I think we've had some talk radio show people whip this up into an unnecessary frenzy, if I can put it that way. I think our experience with Tamil Canadians has largely been positive. I've on this show many times criticized the Tamil Tigers supporters in this country. There's a small number of them who would actively go out and essentially extort money from their fellow Tamil Canadians. That has largely, I think, been stopped thanks to the Conservative government.
But hold on, one point, John. Surely the quality of the group wanting to come in is irrelevant. It's the legality of their aspiration.
Well, I'm speaking more to the populist uprising that you hear on some talk radio shows against it. If we want to talk about the legality, I mean, obviously we accept refugees and we have a process, and that's what we're going to do with this group of 500 people. The ship is now docked in Victoria. The main concern is...
Is it Victoria?
I believe it's Victoria, BC, that the ship is docked. The main concern is identifying who they are and ensuring that they are in fact refugees, and they'll go through the process, and ensuring that we don't have people who are part of the Tamil Tiger movement coming into Canada, because we really don't need that.
This is the drop in the bucket, though. I mean, 450 refugees is a fraction of what we accept a year in Canada. 50,000 people come and apply and are accepted as refugees every year. What's really the fascinating thing about this story is the reaction that it's garnered. And I equate it to sort of this velvet rope syndrome. It's like going to a really nice nightclub. If you're the last one in the door, you want the door shut behind you, and the club then is as exclusive as it's going to get, and the people in there are the people you want to be in that club with. No one else allowed in. We're a country of immigrants. Everyone in...
What does that mean?
It means that everyone throughout their lineage has gone through what these people have gone through to some degree.
That's not part of the story. There's a difference between immigration and refugees, okay? So with the immigration process, you apply to Canada, there's certain requirements that have to be met. Refugee is a different category altogether. It's about ensuring people are safe from being murdered and tortured and so forth. We've signed a convention...
There was a blurring in the past, though.
Pardon me?
That's a fairly recent development. In the past, immigrant and refugee often meant the same sort of thing. Most people who came to Canada did not come here... well, the reason they came here was because of economic distress,
yes,
or
they were economic migrants. No, I would say that when you say a recent... we're talking about with the UN Charter, right? And so we've had this for what, about 50 years now, where, you know, we've had a charter and we distinguish between refugees and between immigrants. So in this case, we're dealing with refugees, which is a different situation altogether.
But at its core, it's about people wanting a better life for themselves and, more importantly, for their children.
No, it's about safety.
And the problem is that there's too many immigrants that just see refugee status as the fast track, not as an actual option of fear.
Where's your evidence of it?
Well, there's another story that we may talk about today of the gentleman from Jamaica that claimed refugee status for being gay. There's also a case of that happening, a couple of cases in the United States where they've claimed they wanted to emigrate from a Middle Eastern country or become refugees because of homosexuality. That is something...
I wouldn't like to be gay in Jamaica.
Well, then don't be. All I'm saying is that
Andrew, come on! I don't
want to get into this discussion, but all I'm saying is that if it gets to the point where you can that easily claim refugee status, anyone can say they're gay, and what are they going to do? Ask for proof? Okay, we want to see the names and numbers of the last 10 men you've dated. So boom, that guy, all of a sudden, everyone's too scared to deny him refugee status because they're scared of being seen as homophobic, and he gets in, he gets protection, he gets all these government resources.
But people who have claimed homosexuality as their reason for claiming refugee status have in fact been turned back in the past. I mean, there was one group that came from Mexico. This was bizarre. There's a thriving gay community in Mexico. Jamaica's a different story. But on this one here, they could well be refugees, but many have paid large amounts of money, apparently, to people handlers. And that would indicate they're not really economic refugees.
They're smugglers. They're smugglers.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. They're not here because they're frightened. They have money, and they want to go elsewhere.
Yeah, they're looking for the fast track. This is the thing. I mean, when you're looking at a ship, I think that the numbers were, 500 people on a ship. That's not like people running away from the government, jumping on a ship and coming. That's an orchestrated effort for people to come over to Canada. They know the system. They're going to play that system.
Do we have any proof that Tamils are being persecuted in Sri Lanka?
I think we have had reports from Amnesty International and some other groups that have pointed to the persecution of Tamils in Sri Lanka. I think there's no doubt that there have been serious racial divide in that country for a long time. And I think that we can, from our past experience, say that there are Tamils living in Canada who are now Canadians who have been persecuted in that country. So there is evidence to support it.
In the past, but isn't there now a move for reconciliation? That there's politicians now coming forward to say we're all Sri Lankan?
Imagine being in the midst of a brutal civil war for years and years, which was occurring in Sri Lanka. The Tamil Tigers were notorious for suicide bombings and so forth.
Invented it.
I don't think you're going to find a reconciliation that comes together very quickly and very smoothly.
So what are you saying? That we actually should allow people in if we can guarantee they're not people smugglers or members of terrorism?
I would say that if we can ensure that these people are refugees, if they pass the process, then we let them in.
You realize there will probably be another 10 ships sailing within the month.
But look, this is our process, and we say there's another 10 ships. We live a long way away. We don't have a huge history of boat people coming to our country in thousands.
Away. Other countries
look where Australia is located geographically. It's a different situation. So I don't think we really need to worry about having boatloads and boatloads and boatloads of people. And if we do, then we deal with it.
Now, what is the process? So right when they land, presumably they can't all. They take some time to screen them. What do they do before they've been?
Keep them in detention.
They're in detention
until they're in detention centers until they determine what their identity is.
Do we have the infrastructure for that to take however many more ships come?
Provide jobs for construction workers.
I mean,
so far we have no problem dealing with 500 people coming to ship. But the issue really comes down to us as well. I mean, for years we've been trying to reform our refugee system and our refugee boards, which have been largely made up of political appointees. We politicized the refugee system. We should actually have professional bureaucrats who manage this. We should get it through quickly. We take too long to do it. It's our fault in some cases.
You said here, and I'm sure many people are aware of this, you have journalists or people who will say, we've become the doormat of the world. And the thing is, every Western country says that. If you spend time in the UK or the US or Northern Europe, they all say, we're the only country that does this. Well, no, actually, most Western countries have a fairly open policy. You're not here to defend Talk Radio, I wouldn't put you in that position. But sometimes in say, popular media, there is this tendency to make this a very polarized black and white issue. And that doesn't help anyone, does it?
No, but I think it clarifies the two sides. And that's when people are talking about an issue that a lot of Torontonians, Canadians, don't have a clear understanding of our immigration system. And so you need to make the issue as digestible as possible in order for an audience to get the two sides. And maybe we've done a disservice in doing that, but I think that it allows a lot of people to be engaged in the debate. Unfortunately, from the talk radio perspective, the calls we were taking on this morning's show that I was producing was all people who were at one point new Canadians, but were saying, when I came to this country, I was committed to making it a better place. These people are committed to sucking our resources and, as has been pointed out, accessing these government services that are a part of the immigration and refugee process. If you look at the types of people who, the types of Tamils who have already immigrated to Canada, they are some of the hardest working, most committed members of our society. And yes, there was a bit of a blip during last summer's conflict in Sri Lanka.
Occupying and closing down a major highway illegally.
Sure,
but small thing.
But there were plenty of Canadians who did that this spring and during the G20 summit. There are people. I think that these are important people to have.
We've seen the dilemma here where important people, they're individuals, they're people. However, when there's blatantly some questions to be raised about how they're getting here, why they're getting here, why now, who they are, it's the responsibility of the government to first make sure that we are going to be safe and secure, and make sure that we're only going to give resources to people that need them.
By letting 500 Tamils in could jeopardize our security, our safety?
Yes, absolutely. There were a lot less than 500 people involved in 9/11.
Sure.
Okay, McKay, here, listen to this. Think about this for a minute. In the past, when we let Tamil Tigers in and we didn't screen them for being terrorists, who do we think suffered? It was Tamil Canadians who were being extorted. And you have to understand, it wasn't just give us money or, and you'd walk away. You'd beat people up, you'd assault people, you'd threaten their lives. It is a serious issue.
I agree. The worst thing to come of this story is that we're empowering the human trafficking industry. That's what we should be addressing first and foremost. I think our personal security as Canadians, I don't buy the fact that it is in jeopardy in any way. But as a country, if we're empowering that industry, that's dangerous, because that is, it's a miracle.
You don't buy the historical fact that we actually had let Tamil Tiger terrorists in the past who extorted money out of their own communities, who threatened Canadian police officers, for example. You don't think that has any merit whatsoever?
I don't think that allowing members of the Tamil community into Canada poses any more threat than allowing any other group in, and I do question the government's
You don't think we have to make sure we screen to ensure that we're not letting terrorists?
I think we all agree on that. Look, I do believe that there are other groups that pose a greater threat to our way of life, certainly than people from the Tamil community. But what I do have a problem with is this. Every time we speak of those who complain, immigrants are coming in and they're living off the state, and these are the hardest working people. Some of them are. Some of them are parasites, just like people who've been here 200 years. Some immigrants work very hard. I think what people, Italian, Portuguese, and some people who came here maybe 40 years ago, what they're saying is, when we came here, there was no infrastructure to help us. We worked hard and we did okay. There are people who come here now, and the infrastructure is there, and sometimes it's being used, not even abused, but used, and that's true.
That's an argument purely out of ignorance about the Tamil community. I would say they're probably the most hardworking, most recent hardworking immigrant community in this country.
So I think that's such a white thing to say.
It's not a white thing to say. I'll tell you why.
Some Tamils work hard, some are lazy. Some white people work hard, some are lazy.
No, look, they have strong families.
Okay.
They have strong families. They understand what opportunity is about. They're entrepreneurial. You go into any of the kitchens in Vancouver and especially in Toronto.
Okay.
Who's cooking the foods and
that is different from which ethnic group? Tell me the lazy ethnic groups.
It's not about asking me to highlight.
You're less comfortable with that. Hold on. Hold on. You're less comfortable with that, aren't you?
I would argue that you would find groups that come to Canada that don't have a strong family structure.
True.
That don't have skills and entrepreneurial drive are less likely to be able to succeed and don't have the language skills.
Okay, you know what?
In this country.
You're always attacking the Danes, aren't you? Leave that country alone. Poor old Denmark. Back in a few moments on the Michael Corrin Show. See you soon. Don't go away.